what I wanted to get at was the absolute unavoidable breaking point of how I felt after our dad died. So it didn't, at the time, it didn't really feel like a breaking point in the outside world because from one day to the next, of course, he'd passed away. But I also felt that things in my life hadn't really changed from one day to the next. Um, on the other hand, the feelings that came up in that moment around him dying and the day, let's say the day afterwards, it was such a colossal flood of pain, physical pain, that it was completely obvious that it was off the scale of anything I'd ever felt before.
Can you tell the story?
So I found out he passed away. I just became completely numb. I I was quite far away from where I live, about 3 kilometers. So I tried to walk home, and I can barely remember walking home. I was just not really there. I was just completely numb, but also somehow barely conscious. And during that walk, it lasted, I don't even know how long it lasted, how long it took me to walk it. I felt like I was becoming disembodied and almost like I was drunk, like really drunk. And I got to the village where I live, and I was at the bottom of the hill. I live up a hill. And I became more conscious. I was like, right, I'm here. And I felt really cold. It was a hot late summer's evening, but I was freezing and I felt sick, like I was going to throw up. And I just could barely move. And I lay down on the ground just in the middle of a car park, and I just couldn't move, and I couldn't walk up the hill. And I phoned my wife and I said, you've got to pick me up. I can't move. She drove down. She helped me into the car. I got home and I sat on the sofa, and I was just there, just completely aghast at the level of physical pain that was here. And my logical brain just didn't understand anything. And I said to her, I know he's dead, but why the hell does it hurt so much? Like, what has this pain got to do with the logical event, or the event seen through a logical lens? He'd been ill for a long time. So there was, clearly a process of coming to terms with what was going to happen. But when it happened, my body woke up, basically, or something woke up in me. Something woke up in me that my brain fundamentally didn't understand. And it was completely unavoidable in the sense that, so previously, like I said, I'd always been looking at solutions on the outside to solve problems on the inside.
Yep.
And what I discovered through this nuclear explosion of pain, that, it took me a while to figure it out, but there is no solution on the outside that helps you or that actually finds the root of what's happening on the inside. I had to just learn new tools on the fly in a very, very difficult emotional situation. And it took me years. So I'm talking about, that was September 2021. So a fair few years ago now. And it's like just waking up and you just find yourself lying in the middle of the road and you've been hit by a truck and you've got no idea how that happened.
Exactly, which is why, yeah, which is why I'm curious to ask, like, if it is something that came out of nowhere, that you weren't conscious of previously, that it was a complete loss of bodily control, as well as almost control of your consciousness, like you couldn't even track time or space or movement in, if I could put it that way, in that period. I guess the question is, like, because you said you didn't have the tools to deal with it, but is there anything that you think you've learned over the last 4 years, almost knocking on 5, that would mean that anything different would happen?
Well, I'll never know is the honest answer.
I'm not. I don't want to sabotage what you're going to say about your emotional development since then, because there's a huge change and you're a completely different guy. And I think there are, let's say, emotional tool sets that you've got, which I don't have today. That and you've put a great deal of work into that, and actually a lot of stuff that you've done. When you did it, at least, scared the hell out of me. As you were describing to me some stuff that you've done since then, like becoming a coach for people and things, and just taking risks, doing art, all sorts of stuff. I guess that's your story to tell. But I still think that there's like the element of being completely out of control, which is something that you were forced to face, right? But it's still there, right? So there's nothing you can do about that.
So I think in that moment where I became in pain, the question was not, have I lost control? The question was, what is actually in control? Because my body did that for a reason. Maybe my mind wasn't in control anymore, and my body was. My body was taking charge, saying, no, you're not going to think about this in the old way, because that's not going to work. You're going to have to think about this in a new way. And the signal is unrelenting pain, day and night, until you figure it out. And that's what it felt like. And it was like something else took charge. Something else took charge of my being. And that was the most frightening thing. And that's why the toolkits didn't work, because the toolkits were not from that part of me. They were from the part of me that I pieced together over the years, mostly partially consciously, right? Through our upbringing, partially consciously. I can't say it was all subconscious, to survive that time. And that the toolbox I had was a very carefully crafted and locked down set of programs that really worked, really worked great to do that world building. But then when Dad died, that tool set just became obliterated. My body said, I'm going to burn all of that, and you're going to watch it all burn, and you're going to have to figure out something new, because we're not doing that again.
Who were you then up until that point? Like, what was how were you interacting with people in the world? Like, with parents or with siblings or...
Well, what I can definitely say is there was there were roles. There were roles. So I had a role with you that I don't do anymore, which was a kind of like Big Brother written in font size 3 slash, and then the next part in font size 30, father figure. And that latter part, I didn't want to do.
Well, you also were a parasite.
Okay.
There's also an element of you that would let me go and do something. And then once I'd done the thing, you'd be like, all right, okay. I guess I'll do that then. There was a little bit of, maybe parasite's the wrong word, but just like, I don't know, just simple things like spent hours researching what TV to get, and then you'd be like, oh, you get that one, okay, I'll get that one then. Just little, like, just pissed me off. Just felt like, well, I don't know whether you did like an Iron Man because I'd done it. I don't know. Or like other things. Maybe you did. But there was this kind of interplay of, well, if he can do it, then I'll do it. Or if he's got that thing, then I'll get that thing. It wasn't extreme in a way, but sometimes I did feel like I was a bit of a dummy out there in the world that gave you a sense of safety. Is that correct? Or is that just my perception?
Well, you definitely gave me a sense of safety. I mean, whether, I didn't think you were a dummy, and I didn't.
Not like an idiot dummy, but like a crash test dummy, like for emotional safety.
Oh, no, I mean, I never had that feeling. I always valued your, I saw you as more confident than I was.
Mm-hmm.
But I was kind of like, part of the role that I had was making sure you're okay. So I would watch you do, which is paradoxical because there was also a side of me that, rejected you. Yeah. So I would, which you alluded to before. And they come hand in hand because they're two sides of the same coin in a way, or maybe it's like three sides of something.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. But there was all of these things kind of wrapped up. So I would, keep an eye on you because I would want to make sure that you didn't. I mean, definitely one thing was to try and make sure more stress came into the home. Mm-hmm. So I'd be like making sure you're okay, and like I would kind of deal with that somehow, at least in my head, whether I was actually doing that in reality, I don't know, but it was somehow an emotional role. So that was one of the things that, one of these kind of patterns I had to get rid of. Also, it makes sense for me to share something that I let go of about you at the start of this year. Okay. So you shared a few months ago I came to visit you and you told me you hated me, and then we laughed and hugged, and then we were running at the time, right? We were doing a park run.
We were.
It was great. Yeah. Like that was best run ever.
We've had a lot of those.
Yeah.
A lot of nice runs together.
But the thing that I managed to let go of, so this role that I've had, father figure, making sure you're all right, I let go of a lot of that. But there was one final piece that came at me, and I was very surprised about it because I wasn't expecting it. But I was doing some more inner work, feeling into things, and it just came up. And it was that I was always intrigued by some of the things you were able to do. So this kind of confidence topic, but I could never really accept them. But then I was always trying to look after you.
On what?
But to look after you, I'd need to accept what you did, but I couldn't
Yeah.
accept what you did. So I got annoyed that I was looking after you because I couldn't accept the things that you did. But I was intrigued with your confidence. So there was something kind of like multiple sides of opposites merging together. And I was in the middle. I was like, why? What is this thing? I don't want to be in this pattern. And the thing was that simply you were teaching me lessons that I needed to learn,
Yeah.
but I didn't want to learn them from you because
Yeah.
I knew I should have learned them from Dad,
Ah.
not you. And I didn't want to
Okay.
learn them from you. So there were things I was watching you do, and I should have, but I couldn't accept
Like
them.
with my kids, or just
I don't
with
know.
people in
It's
general?
just feeling stuff. Like it's not
Okay.
really
You
specific
can't give
things.
examples like I saw you feeding your child and you did it in such a loving way, and I realised that I threw my kids' porridge at their face every day and thought that was fine. Like, or what? No?
Maybe I'll come back to that in another episode.
All right.
It's
I
weird
got,
to say that, but I want to say this. It's weird to say I can't really pin it on one particular thing, but when it clicked, I was like, yeah, that's
well,
why I
the thing
can't
is,
just
once you let
accept the
stuff
thing,
go,
and
then
then
it's
it's gone.
almost hard to grasp anymore. That's the thing. Like,
Exactly.
memories also go, and it's like you forget. I think we talked about it last time. One thing
Yeah.
that I've got definitely still lurking deep down is you were always the one. So you were an emotional crutch for both parents, and you were used as the information go-between to me.
Yes.
So, like, even in adulthood, there were situations where our parents would tell you stuff, especially our father, and be like, make sure you tell Noel. And that information, and you obviously rebelled against that, because, like, then you would be hit with my emotional outbursts to those, whatever information that was. Right.
Yeah.
And I think they were afraid of facing me because I wasn't ever any trouble per se, but I was definitely the black sheep that would point out the bullshit.
Just on that, we both, most of the time you were the black sheep, but we actually flipped a few times. There were times when I was the black sheep.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. There's like, it's never, whatever it is always like the tendency based on behaviors. But my behavior was generally to go out there and do stuff, sometimes radical stuff, just to get it to stop.
Yeah.
Because my focus on, and still now, is like the truth. Like what's actually true.
Yeah.
And that's been
you mentioned that before, and
I paid the price for that so heavily in relationships.
Yeah,
like
right.
as a child, in relationships with people, and I'm dogged. Like I can't. Well, I can let it go. Like the personality can't let it go. Of like, yeah, but this happened, then this happened, then this happened. So what are you talking about? When did the thing happen that you said caused this to happen? Because I didn't see it. When is that? And then of course that causes all sorts of trouble with people who do not have the focus of like, let's go through the sequence of events and find out what happened.
Yeah.
Because maybe it exposes something in them and they realize that they have no reason really for why they behaved their way, or the reason they're actually hiding is so damaging to their self-image that they just don't want to. And so they'll use everything they can, including attacking you personally, to protect whatever it is that they're hiding. And it can just be an emotional state.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? It doesn't have to be that they did something specifically. It's just like they don't want to stare at their own internal void and chaos and so they will do everything to defend themselves. And my focus has always been like, let's look at that, let's look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
absolutely. I think
my
we've both been willing to look at it for sure. I think that's what has kept us so close over the years, is constantly, I mean, ultimately, all our conversations are just like this recording for years. You've used the word chaos a few times. And there's one thing, because you used the chaos after I described the grief situation
yeah,
in 2021. But that's exactly what my internal state was. My internal state was spiritual chaos.
yeah,
And I'd never felt that so intensely. It wasn't really, I mean, it was physical pain, emotional stuff, but also right from the start, like a spiritual level of chaos, which I'd never felt before. And that's also why my tool set was completely redundant and just was obliterated, was I think the word I used before, and I'll use it again. Within the space of, an hour, it was just obliterated, and I knew it was gone. And in these situations, like with you, that these learnings that I went through at the beginning of this year and could let go of things, was after figuring out how to do this process of looking at things, trying to find, what does the truth even mean? You're talking about the truth. We've been looking for the truth. So, I mean, I can just quickly do a footnote here. The reason why I studied physics, I didn't mention it before. So you copied me. I copied our grandfather. I didn't say it before, but I did it because he did it.
yeah,
And the other reason I did it was because I was looking for the truth. Because when we grew up, there was no truth. And I just thought, well, let's ask Mother Nature and argue with that. You can't. You can't argue with that.
Exactly. And I can tell you a similar experience to you. Like, I'm doing, whether it's folding the washing or like going for a run or something like that, I think sitting down and doing physics was some of the most relaxing times of my life. Just felt so cozy and safe.
Yeah, right.
In the bosom of the attempt to model reality in a way that produces predictable, statistically significant results.
That will keep you warm at night.
Ah, cozy. It does if it does if you're not used to that feeling. And and we
If you don't even know what that feeling is without the safety blanket, whatever your safety blanket is.
Yeah. But even at that stage, like in early 20s, getting to the end of my masters, I knew that I couldn't live under that safety blanket anymore. I knew I was hiding. I knew it was a form of hiding.
Yeah.
Should we try and get to the next section of the fantasy of being chosen? What's our segue?
So, the segue is this. Who's choosing what? What is the choice that needs to be made? You're waiting because you don't want to make the choice. You don't want to make the choice to choose yourself. That is why you're waiting to be chosen. I would put it like that. You are waiting to choose yourself.
Waiting for someone else to do it for you.
But,
To face
as we
life.
learned, there's no solution out there that's going to solve the stuff inside.
Yeah.
It's projecting that decision onto someone or something else. And the choice to be made is, can I sit with this feeling and feel it through or not?
Yeah.
If you can,
Yeah, sorry.
let's hear it.
Okay. So, I've only ever had one auditory, as far as I'm aware, one auditory hallucination in my entire life. and it was not scary, but it was so penetrating. It was incredible. And I think it just happened almost out of the blue. Like I was just having a thought about, like, I must have been thinking about wanting someone else to get me out of a particular situation I was in. And it was probably something very simple. Like I can't exactly remember what I was thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
But a voice came, and it was standing right here. I was sitting down on the sofa, and it was right there behind me, and it was a woman's voice. It sounded like a woman, in her 50s, let's say. And the voice said, "No one's going to help you."
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. And I was like, and I turned around to look, and there was no one there. I was like, "No one's going to help you." And it was so harsh. Like I don't remember that she said it in a harsh way, but it was just so clear, no one's going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, it just hit me so hard. Not just like, it was like a revelation as much as it was a punch in the gut, and a feeling of loneliness or something, a feeling of like complete isolation.
Mm-hmm.
But not isolation away from anyone. Like not isolation like being left out or people are over there doing, and I'm over here by myself. It was like there is only isolation and there is no one to help you. And there never is. And there's never anyone for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But again, for me, it was like a wordplay. So I sat down and journaled and was like, no one's going to help you. And I was like, no one, and then kind of slow it down a bit and like, no one is going to help you. There's still the sense of waiting for someone else to change in order for things to be better. And there's definitely a lot of that in life where others are telling you, I would be happy if only you'd have done the dishwasher instead of whatever the hell else it was you were doing.
Mm-hmm.
I would be happy if only whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a classic pattern.
Classic.
If only X, then
Y.
Y.
And we're creating distance to happiness and creating distance to acting out what we want by cutting ourselves off from the solution. So actively removing yourself from autonomy, handing the power over to someone else, whether they realize that's happening or not, right? I could just be, watering the garden, and then someone comes to me and says, "Oh, you didn't do the other thing. That was the higher priority. Why didn't you do the other thing?" And it's like, there is no cosmic prioritization schedule here. Like, at so many simple moments, we're creating distance to happiness.
When you said that the first time, we create distance to happiness. You can look at that the other way around and say, distance is unhappiness.
Yeah.
Which makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
Because happiness isn't a thing.
Yeah, it's the default state. Yeah. Love, I told this to a guy the other day, love and happiness are what you experience when there are no more thoughts and no more seeking. So it's still an expression of desire or a state. Like you can have anyway, you can have a happy thought, but happiness, the experience of happiness, the experience of joy and love and simplicity and gratitude is like the fundamental groundwork of reality that doesn't need to be searched for.
Waiting to be chosen. What does it mean to you now, Noel, waiting to be chosen? You said it in the first episode.
Did I?
Yeah, this came from you.
Oh. If I feel into that, it's like I've got a lot of energy deep in my gut about that, of like linked right now to memories of waiting for our father to turn up, especially on weekends where of course he didn't. And there was a lot of that going on when we were kids. Or sometimes he would apparently turn up drunk and then not be allowed to take us. There is a waiting to be chosen, to be loved. And there's a doubt, and let's talk about doubt then. There's a doubt that I can be loved. There's a doubt that there is something, well, there's a feeling that there's probably something wrong with me that means that I am not lovable, and that I don't deserve love. And I sit in the waiting to be loved, because to be chosen is to be loved, seemingly. And it's me that's not choosing me now. It's me that's not choosing me when I divert my sadness, anger, disappointment, sorrow, loneliness into cleaning the house or whatever it is that you divert yourself into. It could be anything. Smoking, drinking, a hobby. And sitting in that waiting to be chosen is an extremely energetic feeling. And it can feel like it could be sadness or grief or guilt or doubt. I'd say two things about that. I think I've been mislabeling doubt until I think even yesterday. Something I thought was shame, and only shame, I realized it was doubt. And that doubt and shame was creating distance between me and my expression of myself. Because expressing myself like this as we have been in the podcast, can create quite extreme reactions, quite negative reactions, or quite, yeah. And this has helped me to see that choosing to do this with you is actually showing me that doubt is magically disappearing, and the shame doesn't have the weight that it used to. Or it does have that weight. It has exactly the same weight. It's even worse. But I'm just letting it happen. Feeling shame, feeling doubt, and not letting that be what stops me from choosing myself. And choosing myself means doing this and embracing all parts of you. Self-expression. It doesn't have to be good, it just has to be me.
Exactly.
Bye.
See ya.